Hi, class. Can you hear the water splashing on the shore here on this purple planet that I'm on at? Purple rhymes with maple serple, whatever. Yeah, well, ooh, look at that gooey purpley stuff. Okay, well, enough. Just a little nonsense to kind of get me oriented here, so I think serious thoughts. Oh, there we are, back to reality. Here we go. Here's a shiny new outline. Check this outline out. You'll like this outline. There it is. Industrial organizational markets. We just got done talking about consumer markets and segmenting markets, this idea of target market decisions. And we had chapter 5 on consumer markets. A couple outlines on that. Here we're in chapter 6, moving into industrial organizational markets. And these are purchases, as it says at the top here. Industrial organizational purchases are purchases made for industrial organizational use. What a surprise. Not for personal use. So it's all these purchases made for organizational use. Whatever kind of organization it is, not for personal use. So it's this whole category of business. So chapter 6, and we said that the we said that the consumer market was like $4 trillion a year in the U.S. This is even higher, right? Even higher. I'll show you one reason why that's the case. So get your hands on this industrial organizational markets handout outline, and let's just talk about who are we talking about. First, these are types of organizations. First, the government. All the purchases the government, whatever level, makes, local, state, federal. So all government purchases fall in here. How about resellers? We're talking about merchants, folks buying stuff to sell, like wholesalers buying stuff to sell down the channel of distribution to retailers, retailers buying stuff to sell down to consumers. So that whole reseller kind of market. And then the last category here is producers. And that's a grab bag. That's everyone else, anyone else that's in this industrial organizational market. These are providers of goods and services, profit and nonprofit. So these are the producers. So providers of all kinds of goods and services. Profit, nonprofit, purchases made to do what they do, such as raw materials and parts for manufacturing, computers and paper clips for in the office, tennis balls for a racket club, CDs. Does anybody purchase CDs? CDs in a waiting room of a doctor's office, all the stuff Gonzaga buys to do what it does, buying services, buying items, paper clips to computers. Okay, so we've got these 3 categories of folks that fall in this arena. The government, all levels, resellers like wholesalers and retailers, and then producers of all kinds of things, goods and services, profit, nonprofit, from manufacturing to business consulting, okay? As long as it's a purchase made for organizational use, not for personal use. Okay, so here are some characteristics of these markets. And I start off with this idea of derived demand, because it helps explain a couple of these other characteristics. But first, derived demand is a characteristic unto itself. It's a feature of these markets. And actually, for derived demand, I've jumped to another chapter. I've jumped over to chapter 8, page 217. And here's a little picture of derived demand. The point of derived demand is that transactions at the industrial organizational level are derived or driven by consumer purchases or citizen, consumer wants and needs or citizen wants and needs. You think about the government markets, local, state, federal. Okay, so derived purchases in this industrial organizational arena are driven by consumer or citizen wants and needs. So page 217, chapter 8. And here's what I show. Here's the consumer who pays the retailer $32 for a pair of shoes. The consumer's need for a pair of shoes is what's driving all this activity back here. All this activity is derived from this consumer purchase. So what do I show in this conjured up little example here? I show, the tanner pays the hide dealer $4 for a hide. The manufacturer pays the tanner $5 for that tanned hide. We're building a pair of shoes here, right? The wholesaler pays the manufacturer $20 for that pair of shoes. The retailer pays the wholesaler $25 for that pair of shoes. So we got this idea that all these transactions at the industrial organizational level are driven or derived from the consumer's needs and wants, citizens' needs and wants. You look at this, okay, so you got that? You look at this list of characteristics here, okay, and it says derived demand, and then it says higher dollar volume than at the consumer level. Oh yeah, well there it is. We've got $32 a transaction at the consumer level, but we have all these transactions at the industrial organizational level as things are moving from hand to hand to hand. It's industrial purchases. So $54 of industrial transactions, 32 at the consumer level. Okay, so at higher dollar volume, we said 4 trillion a year for the consumer market in the US. And so, yeah, this derived demand idea depicts that, that concept of why it's a higher dollar volume. The next item here, as a characteristic that derived demand helps explain, is fluctuating demand in the industrial organizational market. So these are characteristics of these markets. Fluctuating demand. There's more volatility in this industrial organizational arena than at the consumer market level. And so you think about the consumer markets, we've got cutbacks and recessions and depression and recovery, and things are moving up and down in the consumer level. But a way to think about it is that in this industrial area, it's kind of like, let's see if I can reach around here and do this, it's kind of like this accordion. You got all these transactions, they kind of collapse and then it expands. And so it's like an accordion as it collapses down when things are getting tight, and then it springs back when recovery happens. And so it's kind of like an accordion as things are moving up and down here. You got the wave of things at the consumer level, but this volatility, this accordion kind of thing, as it compresses and expands, is more volatile, more fluctuation at the consumer level in this regard. And so that's a fact of these markets, a characteristic of these markets. And derived demand helps depict that. So other characteristics of these markets. How about geographic concentration? Number 4 right here. Yeah, and the textbook on page 159 talks about that. It's just a fact. And you're looking at US geography. Half of the transactions in this arena are in 7 states in the US. Half the transactions, 7 states. That's probably because they're manufacturing kind of states. States like California, New York, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Texas. Did you get those? You don't have to get those. Just the idea. Page 159, it kind of talks about geographic concentration in the US. Here's kind of a no-brainer one. Number 5, fewer but larger purchases than at the consumer market. Okay, let's talk about you and toilet paper, and Gonzaga and toilet paper. Let's get personal here. You suppose, I don't know how much toilet paper you purchase at a time, but I expect Gonzaga purchases more than you do, and maybe less frequently. They're going to, I don't know, they're going to buy 5 pallets of, have a truck show up with 5 pallets of toilet paper. I don't know if you buy that much, but so they don't purchase as often as you do, but they purchase more than you do. So that's what that says. Fewer but larger purchases than at the consumer level. Just remember you and toilet paper, Gonzaga and toilet paper. And then the last thing over here, where am I? Over here, professional purchasing, see handout. Okay, so underneath this outline out there on Blackboard is a handout. I'm going to show it to you here. You were talking about professional purchasers in this industrial organizational arena. They're buyers, they're purchasing agents, they're trained and expert at doing this. And I guess one theme that I want to kind of fill out here is that what they go through as professional buyers and the things that impact them as professional buyers, it's not a totally foreign, alien thing to what you see in the consumer market. For you personally, what impacts you? How do you go through this process? It's not, they're human. Okay, I don't know if you know this. These purchasing agents and professional buyers are people. Okay, they are people. And some of the same stuff that impacts the consumer, the same processes that consumers go through, they do too, in an analogous, not 100%, but in an analogous kind of way. Okay, so let's look at a couple handouts here that, well, it's one handout with 3 little diagrams on it. I'm going to look at the top 2. So I'm going to move you over here. Let's see. That looks like it might zero in on that. I got both parts of it shown there. I just want to see one part of it, but let's see what happens. I just want to look at the top part. So can I move that a little further here before it falls on the floor? Yeah. Should I try it? I feel like it's going to fall on the floor. Don't pull it back. Don't want it to fall on the floor. Okay, just look at the top item there. Here's the buyer, okay? Professional purchasing person. And here are some variables that impact that buyer's decision. And we start out at the broadest level here. We start out at the environment level, the world that they live in. And so you got things like, you got economic outlook, interest rates, cost of money, political, legal environment, competitive environment, all this stuff here. We've got technology and culture, international stuff even. Okay, everything in the environment, okay? There's a handout underneath this outline. Now we move in a little closer. Now we're moving into the organization itself. And you can think of policies and procedures and systems. It mentions systems, and you think about profit and growth and some of these things that might be organizational objectives. Okay, now we're getting in closer even. Here's some interpersonal, does that ring a bell? Interpersonal variables, sociological variables. We've got authority, status. How about friendships? The buyer has friends. Some of those salespeople that come and visit them, they've done it for years. They got friendships built up. So empathy and other things like this, interpersonal, sociological things. Now, if you remember in chapter 5, I mentioned the family, but chapter 5 didn't have anything on the family. But here in this chapter, we have something that's analogous to the family, that's kind of under sociological interpersonal variables. And so this is on page 148. And it's like analogous to the family. So here's what you see there: sociological interpersonal. You got folks inside the organization, kind of like a family, that have some influence on this buyer's decision. So for instance, it mentions the buyer. Yeah. Hey, but the buyer might not be the decider. The buyer might be doing the transaction, but someone else decided. So you got the buyer, you got deciders, you've got influencers, Oh, how about users too? You got the buyer, you got deciders, you got users, it could be different. You've got influencers, just other people involved. So you got this group of folks, kind of like the family, involved in having some impact on this buying decision, page 148. And then the last one that's in there. So you got buyer, decider, user, who's actually going to use the product, influencers of various kinds. And then the last one they mention is gatekeeper. If you've ever been a salesperson in industrial organizational sales, you know what gatekeepers are, don't you? If you've ever done that, you know what a gatekeeper is. A gatekeeper is someone who restricts the flow of information. They restrict the flow of information. You're a salesperson. You want to get in and talk to maybe the buyer, maybe the decider, maybe you want to talk to some of these folks. And you know what? You've got to get past the gatekeeper. You got to get past the receptionist. You got to get past the secretary, whatever, and get in there and talk to them. And so they have some impact. These gatekeepers have impact on purchase decisions because they can restrict the flow. They can keep you from talking to who you want to if you're a salesperson. You got the idea there? Gatekeepers. Interesting. Page 148. And then down here, how about psychological, within the person, individual? Here we have sociological, interpersonal. Here we got psychological, intrapersonal, within the person, the age, the income, the personality, the risk, security, survival in the firm, all these things that might be coming to mind as this buyer's, maybe not overtly, not consciously necessarily, but impacting, having an impact. So we start out here: environment, broad, worldwide, then the organization, then relationships, sociological, then stuff within, internalized stuff like demographics, like we talked about, within the individual, intrapersonal, psychological. And then here we've got the buyer, okay, making those purchase decisions. So one thing first is that, maybe I already said it. I did already say it, that, this isn't totally different than, you can see the relationships here, the links to the model of consumer behavior that we've looked at. And this kind of sums it up. This on page 150 sums it up a bit. It kind of gets the organization and the individual in there a bit. But this is a little diagram that kind of is interesting. On 150, a little Venn diagram thing, and it shows the individual's needs, like the buyer, risk, job security, money and rewards, career advancement, individual's needs. And then it shows the company's needs, survival, growth, profit, customer satisfaction. And then where those two overlap, the individual, the buyer's needs, and the company's needs overlap, that's the sweet spot where the purchase is likely to happen. Or if you're the salesperson, if you can work to meet those needs of the individuals and the company, that could be the sweet spot where that sale is going to happen, right? Okay. Page 150 is where you see that swell diagram. But wait, there's more, because here's another little picture that works on this topic of professional buyer behavior. Okay. Can I square that up a little bit, maybe, without having everything fall on the floor? Okay. I think I can. There we go. Okay, so they're at the bottom here, right? Of my page, but there's still another thing at the very bottom. There's 3 diagrams on this handout. So we looked at the top one. This is the one that's in the middle on the handout that you've got. And here what do we have here? You know, we're looking at professional buyer behavior, purchasing agent behavior. And look down here. Here it says buy phases. And you look down this list here. And does that look familiar? Buy phases. Look down the list here. Does that look familiar? And you know what you said? Or what you're going to say? You're going to say, heck yes. Okay, that's what, yeah, heck yes. You know what this looks like? This looks like the stages of the decision process for consumers. Hey, how about problem recognition? How about searching for some information in here? How about generating some alternatives, evaluating and making the choice? How about outcomes of the choice? Yeah, in different words, it's about the same thing. It's the decision process from the consumer behavior models that we looked at. Pretty much the same thing. This isn't an alien, different world we live in with industrial professional buyer behavior. A lot of similarities. They're people. A lot of similarities to the consumer behavior stuff we've already looked at. Then, how about this across here? So that's what's going down here. How about this across here? Buying classes. We've got a new task, modified rebuy, straight rebuy. What's a new task? What's it say? Okay, first, what's it saying here? It's saying, are you going to do all these things? Are you going to go step by step? Take your time? Does that sound familiar? Here's a new task. It says, we've never purchased this before, right? Or rarely purchased this. And it says, yes, 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 yes. We're going to do all this stuff. That's a new task. At the other end, we've got a straight rebuy. And it says, no, I don't know about no for problem recognition. You got to have something fired up there, but we're going to skip some steps, maybe speed up the way we go through the process. Does that sound familiar? Everybody said, heck yes. Why did you say heck yes? Because this looks like that model at the end of the very first outline on consumer behavior, where we had things that impact, we summed it up, things that impact the speed and the way consumers go through the decision process. Here's the process. Here it says buy phases. Here it says buy classes. But, you know, how about new task? Does that look like, let's see, what could it be like from the consumer models that we looked at? It could be like, how about extensive problem solving? Darn right. New task is extensive problem solving, step by step through the stages of the decision process, not skipping steps. Yeah. And at the other end over here, we got something that says straight rebuy. The idea is maybe you're out of something. Maybe you have inventory. When the inventory gets to a certain level, a purchase order is generated automatically. Maybe you have a contract with some vendor. When inventories get to a certain level, automatically, untouched by human hands, I mean, there is problem recognition. That's got to happen. But straight rebuy is like routine response, like I'm out of toilet paper, Charmin. Okay, here I've got a contractual relationship. Inventory levels hit a certain level, and purchase order is generated, untouched by human hands, straight rebuy. Okay, so it's like that It's like that model we looked at the end of the first consumer behavior outline. And you get this, so got the flow of the decision process, got these different buying situations that impact the speed and the way you go through the decision process. And this is on page 152. And you get 152 kind of talks about this. It doesn't give you a nice picture like I have here, and it doesn't have this nice picture, but here's the idea. This kind of sums it, right? Extensive problem solving in the consumer context is like a new task for industrial organizational markets. Modified rebuy is like limited problem solving, and that's in the middle ground, but the ends are what make the most sense. At the far end over here, we've got routine response in a consumer context, straight rebuy in an industrial organizational context. Okay, straight rebuy, automatic, almost like me and Charmin toilet paper. Okay. Okay. So what do we know now? We know that we know some characteristics of these industrial organizational markets. We know some, we have some idea of how professional purchasing happens, and models that look at professional purchasing. So that's what we've done up here. Okay. So let me just look, make sure. I think, yeah, that's pretty good. But another thing I want to talk about here, kind of thinking about marketing in this arena. And that's what we're doing. We're looking at buyer behavior and characteristics of buyer behavior. Here's a tool, a useful tool if you're doing business in this industrial organizational arena. Who here knows NAICS? NAICS. Let me say that again. NAICS used to, I just like to say NAICS. NAICS used to be SIC codes. Now it's NAICS, North American Industrial Classification System, NAICS. And it's a tool that can be used if you're marketing into these industrial organizational markets. And maybe some of you worked with it. It's a code scheme. It used to be called SIC codes, SIC, Standard Industrial Classification Codes, but now it's North American Industrial Classification System. And you get this on page 160 and a diagram on page 161, I think, top of 161. And so what do you get with NAICS? Well, first, where do you go to get your hands on NAICS? I got it over here over my shoulder. You can go to the U.S. Census of Manufacturers. That's where you can find these codes. You can go to Survey of Manufacturers, the U.S. Survey of Manufacturers. You can go to some private stuff like Standard & Poor's, Dun & Bradstreet, $1 Million Directory. Okay, what do you get? It categorizes, organizes types of business by this code scheme. Okay, and whatever industrial organization, industrial businesses, by this code scheme system. And it's a handy dandy deal. And especially, the government, you can get it for free, right? It's a handy dandy deal for marketers. For instance, it can help you do things like locate prospective customers, because you know what industries you'd like to work with that might have a need for what we're talking about industrial sales here, that might have a need for whatever it is you produce or provide, goods or services. So you're finding prospective customers. How about developing sales territories and quotas? It can help with that. Coming up with contact information physical addresses, email addresses, who knows what I can find, you know? How about segmenting markets? Doing that, breaking the market up into areas where, you know, deciding what part of the market you're going to pursue. Identifying competitors. So those are something. Estimating demand. What percent of, you know, we got sales in this arena. What percent of that sales volume do you think you can garner to yourself? So estimating demand, yeah, sales territories, developing contact lists. Okay, you got the idea. This code scheme is handy dandy to help you do the job of marketing. Everything from finding customers to divvying up territories, estimating sales, demand, all kinds of stuff. So how does this code scheme work? I'm glad you asked that question because I'm going to pause this. I'm going to pause it this time. Last time I didn't pause it, and I'm fumbling around and it's recording me for like 5 minutes. I'm going, you know, I just redid what you just heard because I left the thing going. Now I'm going to pause it and I'll disappear and come back just like nothing happened. Just like nothing happened. So this is it's around top of page 61 or 2. I can't read my number. But here's the NAICS code scheme. For instance, you know, all construction starts with the 2 digits 23. All manufacturing 31. Okay, and then all across here. So you got these broad categories. Let's say that I have a product that I want to sell. Here it is. Can you see this? This is elastic. Don't ask me where I got this piece of elastic. It's kind of embarrassing. Okay. But I have a company and we sell elastic. We make elastic and we sell it. Yeah. See? Okay. And so I can look in the you know, survey of manufacturing, U.S. Census of manufacturing, whatever. I can look in some of that stuff and I can pursue these different categories. So for instance, maybe manufacturers of apparel. How about those folks? Manufacturers of apparel might have a need for that. So, you know, zeroing in. Manufacturing, not food, not other, but of apparel, okay? How about manufacturers of cut and sewn apparel, not knitting, not accessories, cut and sewn apparel. Okay, so I'm adding digits. As I add more digits, here's 31, here's 315, here's 3152, and then down here I'm under, how about men and boys? Cut and sewn apparel manufacturing. So companies will be given these code numbers. And here's one, men and boys, here's 31522. That kind of an organization, and I can even get more specific. Look over here. How about underwear and nightwear? I've added another digit, 3152221. And I think sometimes they even go to 7 digits. This goes to 6. Underwear and nightwear, men and boys, cut and sewn apparel manufacturing. So there'll be companies listed under this code 315221 that are that manufacture underwear and nightwear, and they might have a need for my elastic, you know, that I can find out who they are. Developing prospect list, get some address, contact information, develop sales territories, volume of business I might expect. That's the idea of NAICS. A handy tool for industrial organizational sales. So catch the idea. Add digits to the code scheme, you get to more specific parts of the market. Pretty slick, little handy dandy tool. So that's the more digits, the more specific, detailed information. Okay, at the very bottom of this says, competitive bidding helps attain value for the dollar. Yeah, that's good. I mean, let me give you some stuff on this. I mean, let's see here. Just let me give you some stuff. Okay, so competitive bidding helps attain value for the dollar is what it says right there. And it's a typical way of obtaining business in this industrial arena. You know, it says supposedly a third of non-consumer products sold in the US are done via competitive bidding. A third of non-consumer products. So you think about construction projects like Gonzaga building something, you think about fleet vehicles or food service or steel supplies, whatever it might be. A very high percentage, I don't know what it is, of government purchases, local, state, federal, competitive bidding. So it's very prevalent, and you're likely to have to face, if you're in this arena, doing business in this arena, you're likely to have to face a bidding situation. So how do you come up with a bid? What do you do with this? You know, here you get it on page 154, 163. I guess on those 2 pages you get some stuff on this. So how do you come up with a bid? You know, how do you do it? You know, so experience and judgment can come into play. And look at this. This is the bottom of that handout with the 3 little panels on it. Here's the bottom panel, okay? And there it is. You know, here's some things to think. How do you get value for the dollar? And that's kind of what you're trying to do with this bidding situation, right? And get value for the dollar. So you can look at some of those items there. You know, it says things like, does the use of the item contribute to its value? And that's number 1. Let's see. How about down at the end? Number 10, is anyone buying it for less? Number 9, will another dependable supplier provide it for less? Number 8, do material, labor, and overhead and profit total its cost? Okay, so those are some things. And you think about experience and judgment, executive judgment, as you bid on contracts. So that's what the buyer is trying to do, you know, trying to keep the marketplace honest, you know, and get bang for the buck. Okay, well, one of the things I like to do in a real live class with this is do a little exercise. Whoa, well, there it went. Okay, that was kind of special. Let's see if we can regroup from that. Well, nothing really happened. Okay. Here's that diagram again. Sorry for the stuttering here. Okay, how to obtain value. So this is what the buyer would go through. And so one way to think about this is, what's it going to cost you to do what is required to bid on what they're after, the fleet service, the food service, whatever, the building, what profit do you need? What's your probability of success? So one of the things I would do in a classroom setting, I would do an auction, because the same variables come into play here, you know, except it's flipped. So you think about this, if someone's after a bid on a contract, they want, everything else being equal, the lowest price, everything else being equal. They want to get bang for the buck. So, I didn't have anything I could auction off in the classroom, or have you bid on, but I had something I could auction off. I didn't have a project you could bid on or whatever. But an auction is the same idea, except it's flipped. An auction, you go with the highest in an auction, but you think about cost, profit, probability of success. So I would do this in a classroom setting, and I would auction off this $50. And it'd be a pop quiz kind of thing. I'd ask you to think about your cost. What profit do you, I know what this is worth. I know what, back to getting bang for your buck. I know what this is worth. And so auction it off, and everything's flipped. I go with the highest. So you have to think about your cost, what profit do you want, and probability of success, looking at how many other folks are in the class are going to bid on this $50, and what do you think is going to happen? So we do this little exercise. You see, auction is the flip side of a bidding situation. Auction, you go with the highest. Bidding, you go with the lowest, all things being equal. And so I'd have this as a pop quiz, and you write your name on a paper and give me a bid, maybe tell me why you gave me that bid. And the next class period, I bring stuff together, bring it all together, and I put it in order from lowest to the highest bid. And someone wants, okay, so what happens? Someone wants to give me $5 for my 50. No, right away. Pretty quick, I'm up to $20 for my, oh yeah. But then I start getting into the pile just a little ways, and pretty soon I'm up to $45. Okay, that's not bad. But before you believe it, realize it, I'm up to $49. They only want to make $1. So the idea is you're only going to make $1 off the transaction. But then before too long, what happens? I'm up to $50. Somebody will give me $50 for my 50. I'm going, oh yeah, if it was a bid situation, you're breaking even. You're not making any money. So you give me 50 for my 50. But wait, somebody will give me $50 and a penny, $51, $52, $53. It goes, I gone up to 60, I think. You give me $60 for my 50. Why would that happen? You flip it back around. And if it's a, let me put the 50 up here. If it's a bidding situation, what does that say? In an auction, you get the idea. Auction it off, I go with the highest. A bidding situation, you flip it back to that bidding situation, it says you're willing to do the job at break even, making no money. Or you're even willing to lose money. Those folks that give me $60 for my 50, you're losing money. Why would someone bid on a contract at break even or losing money? And you got some ideas. Why would that happen? How about you want to get your foot in the door? You want to establish relationships. You want to show them what you can do on this job, and the next job, you'll make your profit. So establishing relationships. How about you want to cover your fixed cost? Times are tough. You want to just keep the lights on. You're willing to suck it up just to cover fixed costs. You don't care about variable costs. That might be a reason. How about competitive aggression? You want to win that. You want your competitors to not get it so bad that you'll suck it up and take a loss. Okay, so there's reasons why you might bid at a loss or break even. Building a relationship, getting a foot in the door, covering fixed cost in tough times, competitive aggression, making sure your competitors don't get it, even if it costs you to keep them from getting it. That could be a reason. And then how about just increasing your volume? Maybe to raw materials or whatever, components you need to do the job, to provide whatever they're after. Maybe you can get some economies of scale, savings on producing things because you're doing it in volume. And maybe you're not going to make that much money. Maybe you're not going to make any money on this particular contract, but because of the impact on your cost, other projects that you're doing would turn out better because of economies of scale, volume kind of stuff might happen. Okay, there are reasons why you might bid on a contract at break even or a loss. Sorry, you can't do this little exercise. And as a matter of fact, I better shut this down because I've been dawdling a bit. Let me make sure. Okay. Uh, uh, that's it. I'm going to take my 50 bucks and run. Nice to have seen you. And I'll have to see how that looked when that board fell over. I'll go back and play that back and see how special that was. Okay. See you again soon.